Hey guys, Kyle here. So, just before the show starts, I wanted to mention our Patreon. You can pay us $1 a month as a thank you, as a tip. You can pay $2 a month to get access to one of our bonus content shows, episodes 2 days early, and a secret Discord chat where all of our Patreon donors get to go and hang out and talk with us directly. Then there's a $5 tier that you can donate to get access to a whole bunch more content. We have multiple bonus episodes on there. So please check it out. Patreon.com/itgetsweird. We don't advertise, we don't make money. So check it out and throw some money if you think that would be cool. Thanks. Welcome to It Gets Weird, our comedy show where we explore the unusual, the unbelievable, and the unexplained to try and make your world a little weirder. I'm Kyle.
And I'm Niall.
And this week, we are picking up.
Nope, we're actually starting a whole new episode. I got a whole thing planned here. We're gonna actually do a retrospective on the on the works of a film of one Richard Linklater. We're bringing that back. We're gonna go through his filmography, film by film, and talk about kind of his growth as a director and our growth of understanding what movies are actually written by him. Because I figured, like, part two of a thing, you don't really need to do that. Part one got through most of it, right?
Well, I've always said that the best time to completely change your podcast's entire manifesto is during a multi-part series on a topic.
Well, it builds the anticipation. So we'll get to part two of the episode in like a year. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I mean, if you want to take a couple years to talk about the works of Richard Linklater, I'm happy to do so. I think I'm trying to conjure literally any movie that.
I mean, does it get any better than School of Rock?
I mean, no, maybe. I don't know. I don't know if I've actually seen that much Richard Linklater.
No, that was always the thing. We kept name dropping. Neither of us remembered that it was School of Rock, that he did School of Rock. So we were trying to, like, I don't know. I never saw the Before trilogy or Boyhood.
Yeah, never actually seen it. I'm sure he's fine. I'm sure it's good stuff.
I've heard people like him as a director.
I sat down in front of Dazed and Confused once, and didn't watch the whole thing. But that was many years ago.
Yeah.
So maybe it's time for us to just really pivot the show a bit.
I always confused Dazed and Confused and Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Which, like,
I mean, it's kind of understandable, but also that's very funny.
Anyway, no, I think, like, well, we can go back to, since you're surprised by this, we can go back to the original format here.
Okay.
And do just a fucking normal fucking
episode, I guess.
I guess. If you really want to make me sit through another one of those, we really need 328 of those.
Another one. Sometimes I confuse Richard Linklater with the guy who made Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Oh,
not even close to the same person.
No,
but I think Synecdoche, New York was another one, and
and
Anomalisa,
the one with Nicolas Cage.
Was Nick Cage?
Nicolas Cage is playing him. He plays the writer director.
Is this I Don't Want to Be Alive Anymore?
No, what? I don't. Yeah, that's a different movie.
Called? Or,
I don't want to be around anymore.
I don't want to be around anymore.
Shit on me.
I got too much shit on me. They should take.
I'm thinking of ending things.
That's what
we're talking about. Charlie Kaufman.
Yeah, Charlie Kaufman. Thank you. I don't want to be around.
Adaptation is what I'm thinking of. There, I just knocked out, like, bang, bang, bang. I closed all of our plot threads, and we can get into
talk about
the
stuff
episode
that actually fucking matters.
Yeah,
for once. No, we left off last week on a big old introduction to the UFO disinformation, the history of that, and some of the more government-based conspiracies about early UFO history.
Yeah, this is such an interesting. Okay, so I guess where I'm coming from is we've done so many UFO episodes, and there's always this undercurrent of, like, or some people think the government is just covering stuff up, and we've never been able to, like, dive under the surface there.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad you finally figured out how not figure out how to do it, but you finally went ahead and did it.
Yeah, I think the thing that really, like, sank its hooks into me with this. Aside from like the just the general UFO disinfo thing,
Mhm.
and the key players that we're going to talk about, hopefully on this episode, but maybe on a third part, is just like the idea of taking the early Maury Island incident with Kenneth Arnold and those two agents visiting him being like Soviet moles, and like that being the explanation for like, if you assume that there was actual sabotage against their helicopter as they took this like supposed UFO evidence. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, you didn't listen to part one.
Yeah.
Like that was such a like, I don't know why, but that was very fascinating to me. This like Cold War espionage and stuff is very interesting to me.
Yeah,
So
it's you've turned through the course of this podcast. You can see Kyle turning into a little bit of a history person, which means I think in a couple years I'm going to start just buying you World War II books.
I don't
And just seeing if that trips your trigger yet, or if
see,
you have to wait till you're 40.
but I think what it is for me is I can, if you set I'm sure that there's some pretty wild stories within World War II. They're obviously wild stories, but I think what fascinates me about history stuff are things that are sort of on the fringe of it.
Yeah.
Like I like the really like there's I think I brought this up many episodes ago. There's like a whole, I want to say it was in Kentucky and in the late 19th century where like basically there was a war between humans and squirrels because the squirrel population was just so overwhelming. They needed to like, so they like started putting out like, basically humans fought squirrels till they like exterminated a significant amount of squirrels. And it's a whole thing, but like, that's like a little weird story in history that like, why would you give a shit about that? Cause it's not, it's not
It's
a huge event. It's just very interesting to me. So like the idea that like, the idea that Cold War espionage extended out to UFO, the UFO phenomenon, and like maybe the government sort of like utilizing that phenomenon to do whatever it is they're trying to do is very interesting to me. So yeah, I don't know. I'm into that, but I don't want to read. I guess like I can't picture myself sitting down and reading about like every battle from World War II. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I feel like the Garrett is much more into the military history than you are.
Yeah, well, Garrett can sit down and he can tell you the make and the model and the guns used and the artillery. Like he can just list off all the.
And sometimes
mechanical.
he will loudly while you're watching Godzilla versus Kong.
Yeah, he just like he'll just like know about that shit somehow. I don't know how he does it, but it's.
He was a history major in college.
That's true. I forgot because he's very much pivoted towards biology.
Yeah, and forestry stuff.
And forestry, but
anyway.
Yeah, I guess he did get. Wow. Okay. Anyways.
Sorry,
the fuck? Are we talking? No.
I'm all over the place.
No. This is great. This is gonna fill in for the fact that like in part 3, I'll have like maybe 30 to 40 minutes worth of content. So like we can just sort of buffer this stuff.
I'm trying to bump
thank you.
Your notes back a little bit.
I'm holding up a big sign. I'm like rotating my finger in the air and I'm holding.
You're holding
a sign
the vamp sign.
Yeah. I do that sometimes when we're podcasting.
We have a Richard Linklater sign where we only use in emergencies.
Go
on another fucking tear about Richard Linklater, who you don't really.
Yeah.
Who like. Okay, last diatribe for the moment. I'm like a big we're both movie people.
Yeah.
We both like Jules is also a big movie person. We watch movies all the time. I for some reason have just like never gone down a Richard Linklater rabbit hole. So I don't know why that is the fucking name that comes to mind when I'm recording this podcast.
It's because we had some weird extended bit about Boyhood many years ago.
Yeah.
Which
I know, but like it just still sticks around to me.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
It's because we can't let a bit die, Niall.
Yeah.
That's really what it is. Which, speaking of, when sometimes I hold the Linklater sign for Niall will hold the talk about driving sign.
Yeah.
When he's really needing me to fill in some dead air.
It's better than the talk about like Seaman. What was the? Oh God, I wish I could remember what this thing was.
The weird scuba fetish thing. We should bring that back. Actually, I run counter to you on this one. I think we should talk more about that. Which that's another really early episode thing.
Yeah.
So, good luck to people who haven't listened to those early episodes. Anyways, let's jump back in here.
Yeah.
So, April 1952 issue of the a little magazine you might have heard of, an American magazine called Life. Time Life. You might have heard of this one.
Played the board game adaptation.
Oh, that's true. Are they connected at all?
I doubt it.
That's a dumb question. That's one of the dumber questions I've had in recent memory.
I mean, here's the thing. Like, maybe it started as like no, isn't Life the one that like a woman made, and then Milton Bradley was just like, or Parker Brothers, whichever, whoever owns it, was just like, you know what, we're just gonna take this whole cloth and sell it as our own thing and let you die in poverty.
Yeah, that's such a good concept for a game.
Anyway,
that's what like I just want games to be as close to real life as possible.
Yeah.
So we have a little article in this magazine called Life, and the article is titled "Have We Visitors from Space?"
It's just have we visitors?
Have we visitors from space?
Okay, so in a present tense, are they currently on this planet?
Exactly.
Okay.
Are they here? Have we?
Yes.
Do we have visitors from space? I don't know. Have we?
It's like when you first said it, I know it's technically grammatically correct, but it's one of those things that just my brain was just like, there's a word missing in there. What is this actually?
Well, we don't speak like this. We're much more cultured in 2022 than these people. But in this article, the authors are writing about speaking to senior Air Force officials, and from their discussions with these Air Force officials, they claim to be able to declare that the flying saucer flap from 1947 and onwards is neither a quote visionary phenomenon nor a natural phenomenon, nor were they balloons or man-made aircraft designed by Americans or Russians, end quote.
So what is a visionary phenomenon in this case? I
think it's just saying something visual, like a visual, like a trick of the eye.
Okay.
You know?
Makes sense.
Which when you eliminate these ideas, these explanations, because these are kind of the official, a lot of the official explanations are exactly what I just said, then you are going to speculate on the extraterrestrial theory, right? So this article reaches Captain Edward Ruppelt. Now, does that name ring a bell?
Very vaguely.
Ruppelt at this time begins to run the Air Force's new UFO investigation group. It was once called Project Sign, then Project Grudge, and now it is Project Blue Book.
That's why. Okay, yep.
So, at this point, the Air Force is wanting to kind of put a stopper on UFO stories, and push as many like easy, rational, terrestrial explanations as they can. And they don't want to, for the ones that are like more difficult to explain too, it's just kind of, there's a lot, it gets described by the UFO community as very hand wavy on some of these stories. So what's weird about all this article in Time Life is that it kind of implies that the Air Force is pushing the UFO extraterrestrial narrative that they seem to want to keep a lid on.
Gotcha.
Because they're talking with these Air Force officials about it. This is also where, sorry, we talked last time about how the Air Force and the Marines were petty, catty little fuckers to each other.
The kind of like turf war behind the scenes between them that they kept like undercutting each other and trying to vie for supremacy.
Well, here's the thing.
It's a real war with grandpa situation.
Yes. Here's the thing. Henry Luce, the basically founder of Time Life, he's gone. Was a close friend of Secretary of State John Foster Dulles and his brother Alan Dulles.
Now, of course, the name Dulles Air Force Base.
Well, Dulles is the first director of the CIA.
Right.
So this is like the suggestion here is that there is some weird interplay between different government and military offices that Ruppelt is not informed on. He does not know, like, he, on the one hand, he's trying to quiet down these UFO cases and push a particular side of things, but then on the other hand, somebody else is doing the exact opposite and stoking the flames.
Gotcha.
Which we kind of like talked about that last time, because the military like the Marines would like put out one explanation and the Air Force would put out another and try and counter each other's like explanations for certain things. So July of that same year, it's 1952, while there's like a bunch of UFO sightings happening, Ruppelt's in Washington, D.C. on a business trip, and he happens to pick up a newspaper and read it and finds that a couple days previously, there had been a huge UFO sighting over the nation's capital in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
So July 19th and 20th, a lot of UFOs supposedly appeared on air traffic controller radar. They were not on any known flight path, and they were also supposedly able to do maneuvers in the air that is just abnormal, not typical of any craft that we knew.
Yeah, we haven't done this for an episode yet.
We haven't.
Yeah.
No, this is the Washington D.C. flyover. If people want to look into this story, and there's even some reports to accompany these radar sightings of, I guess, what gets described as fireballs with like tails.
Mm-hmm.
So in some cases they're treated as meteors, but some people claim that these quote unquote meteors would like suddenly change direction.
Okay.
And once they had sent like the Air Force, the jets were sent out to like go and find these objects and see what was going on, all of them had disappeared. They couldn't find anything.
Yeah. It stopped very suddenly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now this leaves Ruppelt confused because nobody told him that this happened. He had no idea.
Really?
Yeah, he finds out by reading that newspaper.
Yeah, I guess like if you're not in the area, news would travel at that pace. Yeah, that makes sense. Like I'm sorry, I realize this is silly, but I'm so used to things spreading so quickly, and like that being
not the case. Yeah,
that would be
not
such like a massive
1952.
event. But
Yeah.
in 1952, it would have to go out through like radio programs and newspapers, basically,
Mm-hmm. So he doesn't know, and
like
he
early
gets
TV.
he gets like harangued by reporters and media, and he's basically doing the no comment thing because he's not sure what to do, and that leads to a bunch of headlines with things like Air Force won't talk.
Okay.
So Ruppelt then goes out to find witnesses and conduct interviews with the witnesses. He tries to rent a car, like a staff car, to go and do this, and he gets the runaround. He is told that his car is not available and that he could not actually get the expense for a rental. So he was told to take a bus.
What?
He was told to take a bus, but Ruppelt doesn't know Washington, D.C.'s transit system, and he does not have the per diem for a cab. So he
just can't get on site.
He literally is getting fucked over by the people in D.C. when he wants to conduct these interviews with people who supposedly saw the UFOs over the fucking Capitol.
So he's just by himself in a city he has no idea how to maneuver in, with no like help, and his organization won't even like pay for anything for him to get a fucking cab. Wow, that
weird,
is
huh? Pretty weird. So he ends up going back to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, where Project Blue Book was operating out of, and it's just a couple days later, UFO flyovers begin again.
Wow. Okay.
And there's more witnesses, more control tower like personnel who have seen things on radar. Just lots and lots of people seeing weird blips. And what's weird about these sightings is that a lot of the reports were kind of contradictory. Like people in the same towers seeing like one thing while other people in the same tower didn't see anything at all. And so we have just completely conflicting reports within these like organizations that are like watching the skies for this stuff. So the Air Force puts out an explanation for this stuff, basically saying that the radar blips that the control towers had seen were misidentifications that were caused by weather somehow. And this is you'll remember this from the Project Blue Book episode. They specifically say that it was a temperature inversion that had happened over DC. And then as far as like the visual sightings, they, I guess, were just kind of explained away as stars and city lights that were misidentified from like pilots with vertigo, which is also, I guess, the explanation for the World War II Foo Fighters.
Right.
Which
okay.
I think that happened over like the fucking like Atlantic, I want to say.
Yeah.
During like dogfights and stuff. That's another one that we've mentioned but not gotten deep into the story of the Foo Fighters. But that story I've heard is the best.
Yeah, other than they've provided a later project for members of the Germs. And,
Thank you. Yeah,
yeah.
Is that what the song is called? The best. I know he says the best, best or whatever, but
the best of Foo.
Yeah. All that being said, people don't really like the Air Force's explanation. It reads pretty shoddy. Like the people on the ground who claim to have witnessed like the green fireball, or not green, but like the fireball comet ones that
with
like
the tail and everything. Yeah.
Like they're just told that they're shooting stars, like
it's just there are shooting stars like groupings of them and stuff. That is a thing. But like, what that looks like.
Yeah. And like temperature inversion too is just not like acceptable. And at this point we've kind of got like, this is Cold War tension and there's crazy shit flying over the Capitol. So it's something akin to mass hysteria over this UFO stuff. And but our friend Captain Ruppelt with Project Blue Book had his own reasons not to believe the Air Force's explanation.
Because they tried to keep him from being able to do any research on the topic?
Not just that. Because in his memoirs, he wrote that a few days prior to the Washington flyover event, he had, I guess, spoken to a scientist from an agency that was not willing to reveal their identity. And whoever this contact was supposedly warned him really, and I quote, "You're going to have the granddaddy of all UFO sightings. The sightings will occur in Washington or New York, probably Washington."
So we have a deep throat situation here.
Which I think also gets referenced in the show.
Yes. So there is a guy that sets him on the path of Washington, D.C.
Yeah. So Ruppelt, Ruppelt has a deep throat moment. And
deep
gets
throat, long neck. I don't know.
Yeah. He gets. This is tying too closely in with our Patreon
Look,
content.
it's a theme week. We unintentionally did a theme week.
It is. Yeah. It's blowjob week and it gets weird.
more likely it's deep throat week. It gets weird.
A deep throat's a type of blowjob.
It is, but look, specificity is key here.
Fair. That's what really matters to us here at this show is the specificity of our sex acts.
Yeah.
So 1952, after the whole situation with the Washington D.C. flyovers, this is of course, like I said, there's this Cold War tension. So people are like, the Soviets are doing something fucked up. Which it's extra disturbing because it's like if it's the Soviets, they've managed to breach the airspace like over the Capitol.
Yeah. And that's a thing that like we talk about sometimes, but we also like, I feel like there's stuff you could look into on like any sort of messaging about UFOs is so colored by the fact that any kind of weird thing, there's such a Soviet panic at the time. There's so much of like the Red Scare type stuff that a lot of people, if you say something, if you admit that there was anything in the sky, then people are going to like get in their bomb shelters before they're going to think it's aliens, at least some of them. And eventually it'll come around that people will be like, oh no, it's actually aliens trying to prevent the Soviets and the United States from getting into a nuclear war. Yeah. Which we could really use those Space Brothers right about now. That'd be kind of nice.
So, so yeah, like the Soviets may have gotten within striking range of the White House.
Jesus.
And so the CIA then launches its own UFO investigation the following month. And there are records of the meetings that occurred at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base with Air Technical Intelligence Center officials. And it sort of seems to show that they looked into the possibility that the objects that were seen in the Washington flyover had actually been a secret American project.
That's such a silly way to try. Like, I realize if it's a secret American project, they're testing something, but like, why would you test it there? That seems absolutely absurd.
Right. It is odd. But like, and on top of that, like they would know about probably some of the most up-to-date secret tech that the US currently has. Like at the time it would have been the U-2, the bomber. Since they didn't like
the U-2 one is how to dismantle an atomic bomb.
That's true. It's the U-2 bomber, right?
I think so.
I think it is. I don't know anything about.
Here's the thing. I don't know dick all about military weaponry. All I know is stuff that I learned from playing like GoldenEye and like and I was going to start naming 007 games, but you know, Nightfire and Double Agent and fucking
yeah. Well, the CIA
GoldenEye Reloaded.
They end up basically thinking it's probably not an American craft.
Okay.
So, and yeah, like exactly like you said, like why would they fly top secret tech over the fucking Capitol? Like why would they do that?
It just doesn't make a lot of sense.
There's no reason for them to do that. But what this kind of points out is like on the other end of things, it doesn't make a lot of sense for Russians to fly top secret tech over the Capitol.
Yeah, unless they were actively delivering a payload. Like unless they were going to like bomb, you know?
Yeah. Like there's so many things that could go wrong there. Worst of all for them probably losing whatever their advanced tech is to the Americans.
Yeah.
It just doesn't seem worth it.
I do think there's one thing we haven't considered.
Okay.
And you know how like there's occasionally one of these things that is just a little too public in a way that doesn't make any sense. And I think what we haven't considered is that one of the people in the higher up in these programs has a massive exhibitionism fetish.
Oh, okay.
And so
this
they're
is like wow,
we're whipping our classified dick out in front of the American public, basically, is what we're talking about here.
Okay, so we've got the deep throat going down in Washington, D.C., while an exhibitionist does the most grand scale exhibition that you can possibly.
Yeah, and like, you know, standard like actual sex in front of people look, they got bored of that a while ago. So now they're going to take it. They have to show classified military top secret shit to the American public.
What the reports tend to not. What the reports forget is how during the Washington, D.C. flyover, there were those two people who were just fully nude and fucking like in the courtyard just outside the Capitol building. But everybody was paying attention to the skies.
Yeah,
so,
I was going to say, that's one of the safest times to have sex is when there's a UFO event in the sky because no one's paying any attention to you.
This guy's like hitting it from behind, and then he's like looking up and kind of like, you know, checking around, making sure everybody's watching the weird comets in the air and going back to... That's got to be the best possible time to do a public sexual encounter. God, that I put that on a list of things that I don't quite understand. You know,
exhibitionism?
Yeah, like we've feet check, don't get that one. Also don't get wanting to just like fuck in front of a bunch of people. It's like a weird idea to me.
Look, you're showing off. It's a power play. Basically, if you boil any kink down to power dynamics, it makes a lot more sense.
I mean, yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah, fair enough. But I feel like they're in that like you, like I feel like I don't know whether I actually want to unpack this now that I'm thinking about it.
If you don't want to unpack it, that's perfectly
the
fine.
cogs started going in my brain, and I realized like what's probably going on with that kind of a fetish, and I don't want to vocalize it.
We'll save this for our Patreon bonus episodes where we're gonna start watching porn.
That's true. We are going to watch some UFO-based pornography, and you can hear us talk about all kinds of fetishes to really get into the psychology of it.
This is the unfortunate thing is that I'm doing all of this promo for the episode that we recorded. They will be already out by the time this comes out. So on the Patreon. So it's we didn't actually watch porn.
We're going to though.
We did postulate on the idea.
we're gonna do it though.
Yeah.
Mark my words. So one theory is that they were actually just Russian balloons.
Oh, okay.
So the balloons and the balloons would basically act as information gathering to like okay, which is like really crazy. A crazy thought to me is like the idea is you go there with these balloons, somebody lets them loose in the sky over the Capitol, and then they're just the idea is they are testing the response of the American military and Air Force, what they would do in the event of like a mysterious object just appearing over their Capitol.
Oh, so it's not even like there's sensors on these balloons that are gathering data on anything or like taking pictures or some shit. It's literally the theory is they put up balloons just to see basically how the US would respond.
I think that they do also sometimes equip these things with some sort of like radar, something or other.
I figured it was like a weather balloon type kind of thing.
Yeah.
It would just have sensors on it, and you'd gather information and
yeah.
you know.
Well, and the key problem though with all balloon-based explanations for UFOs is how would they move that way?
Yeah.
Like a UFO, at least your typical UFO, it's not going to like a balloon's going to basically go straight up and get carried by the wind in a very natural way. UFOs can pivot on a dime. So the CIA investigation ends up concluding that the purpose of whatever this was, this flyover with these experimental aircraft or whatever it is that it was an actual just straight up psychological operation.
Okay. But operation, do you mean it was intentionally carried out by some sort of body, or it's just a psychological like happening, a group bunch, like a mass hysteria, mass phenomena kind of thing?
So it's pointed out how the Russian media never once, in fact, I have some insight onto this. The Russian media never once mentioned flying saucers like UFOs, like amid the 40s through 50s flap.
Mm-hmm.
They never, their media didn't bring that stuff up. Not even, and the furthermore, like not even to just like make fun of America for it.
Huh.
So the idea is that maybe the entire phenomenon was manufactured to foster panic and mass hysteria so that whenever an actual attack happened, the response would be slow and confused and like anticipating false alarms.
See, that kind of shit has always kind of made sense to me, where it's basically just like sowing discontent or like distrust in a thing over time, and you're just prepping them so that they're basically you're setting up a boy who cried wolf scenario with UFOs, so that when the Russians decided to actually like do an attack, then everyone just thinks it's another weird fucking boy who cried wolf situation.
Yeah. It's just to really foment this like self-distrust and confusion that's kind of happening as a result of this phenomenon.
And I guess if it makes sense to me, master brilliant war tactician that I am, it's got to be good, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't know the first thing about that stuff, but like I guess I can kind of buy it. It's still really weird.
It's a psychological flanking maneuver.
Yes.
Or pincer maneuver, you know?
Some people really, and you know what, Niall?
What?
Some dick-sucking exhibitionists really want to be psychologically flanked.
That is a phrase that I was not expecting to have on this podcast.
And it's the episode title.
Some dick-sucking exhibitionist. All right. I guess we're that kind of podcast now. We always have been, but it's
so something else that gets brought up and this is years after the fact, is the idea of an electronic countermeasure.
okay.
So an ECM is a thing that had been in use since 1945, and what it was this like reflective aluminum chaff that would get released.
Yeah.
And it was used to confuse radar with these fake readings. And that would eventually later on, years down the line, become radar jamming technology. So this is an idea that was put forward by a guy named Leon Davidson, who he basically, so he has a doctorate in engineering at Columbia University. He had worked on the Manhattan Project. And he also served as a supervising engineer at Los Alamos Labs. So there is some credibility there to him basically putting forward this theory of ECMs being what caused the Washington D.C. flyovers.
Interesting. Okay.
So in 1959, Davidson sort of talks about this in an essay, saying that the U.S. Air Force had been able to alter enemy radar returns since as early as 1950. And this was by using a device that would capture, modify, and amplify radar impulses, and then the readings that would get sent back were inaccurate.
Okay. Makes sense.
So he talks about how the military use of this technology that would create these false readings didn't actually correspond with actual aircraft. Now, a few years before Davidson's essay on this subject came out, Aviation Research and Development magazine published a story about this exact sort of ECM technology becoming sort of a publicly available thing in the aviation industry. And it was going to be sold and used for the training of radar operators.
Okay.
It's since then been declassified in the early 1960s under something called Project Palladium, that American pilots would intentionally fly into Russian airspace and gather data. And it's believed that this was the kind of thing that we were doing over Russian skies as well. So the idea here is that if Russians were flying over the capital and causing this panic and confusion with these ECMs, we did the exact same shit to them.
So it's actually not the only reason that the reason this seems so strange in our history is because it was an aberration. It was, we do not know the other side of it where, yeah, the US did shit too in Russia. And this was just them possibly, allegedly, doing the same thing back to us, but it just happened to be in a major population center.
We don't get to know about our interference in Russian airspace with that stuff until declassified documents in the 60s. So, you know, it just like the explanation couldn't like be out there publicly, I guess is kind of the idea.
I wonder how much of that shit is like it could account for a lot of UFO phenomena.
Well, we got like I know we say it all the time, but we got like a psychic vibration between our brains sometimes. It's like you're reading where I'm going next or sensing.
It felt like it felt like either one of those things you would say that's an entirely different episode about, or and I want to do that, or you would, or it was going to be the next thing.
I just wanted to mention that that exact technology, that stuff, is one of the possible explanations that's brought up in the last couple years for the now UAP sightings that the government claims to be interested in.
Okay. Yeah.
So it to this day, it's like it's still an idea as an explanation. Now here's the thing though. See, the CIA blames Russia for this like ECM shit. Davidson, the guy who put out this theory, did not.
Okay.
Davidson says, quote, "Since 1951, the CIA has caused or sponsored saucer sightings for its own purposes through the military use of ECM on a classified basis, unknown to the radar observers who were involved," end quote. So the guy who has some serious bona fides putting out this theory is like, they make UFO panic intentionally with this stuff.
Interesting. Okay. Like that is exactly what I was thinking about. It's just like, especially once UFO sightings became more standardized, then it makes sense that there would be a little bit more of a simpler explanation to it. And the fact that it could just be this military technology that is used to confuse and gather information elsewhere ended up being used here to do this stuff it makes perfect sense. It fucking just unlocks a door and makes a lot of this stuff it reads so much differently.
Yeah. Now, Niall, do you remember the Robertson panel?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So the CIA puts together this secret panel of scientists to basically confer on the UFO phenomenon and all this shit that we've been talking about.
The weirdest episode of Project Blue Book.
Yes.
That episode is strange.
So they've got like a whole bunch of people weighing in on the topic. This includes the Pentagon's director of the Weapons Systems Evaluations Group. This is Dr. Howard Percy Robertson, which the panel is named after him. But we've got astronomers, radar experts, rocket scientists, and nuclear physicists. Now, they conclude with the mundane explanation for UFOs that this visual trickery, just anomalies in radar and sensor, and they also kind of come to the conclusion that like UFO panic is a legitimate problem in the United States, and they needed to train our military to basically combat the phenomenon. Not literally combat, but like run counter to what's causing the panic so that they can like handle it when people are like freaking out about UFO sightings.
Okay, yeah.
Like we need to make sure that the military's trained to not like stoke the flames.
Gotcha. Okay. Basically doing media training for
Yes.
Okay, interesting.
This is where we get the idea with Project Blue Book of we need to debunk as just literally every UFO case we can find. It's no longer Ruppelt working with Project Blue Book, it's no longer about authentic investigation into the thing. It is like huge from the start. Our goal is to debunk all of this, not just research and figure out what's going on, just like literally make sure that you can close the book on it.
So it straight up goes from a scientific exploration into just an agenda driven, we got to squash that.
That's
shit.
the idea.
Okay.
Yeah. And they also, as a part of this new effort, advised that civilian organizations of UFO followers, like people who were into the phenomenon, who are tracking it closely, they want those civilians to be closely monitored.
Okay.
They worried that they could influence public thought on the subject and possibly used for quote unquote subversive purposes.
I hate this kind of shit.
Yeah.
It's like
it's wild.
Government just keeping lists of people to fucking monitor. It sucks.
Yeah.
One of my least favorite things.
And here's the thing. This idea this idea of monitoring civilians was, I guess, one that was sort of they had sort of preemptively considered this, because one of the suggestions made to monitor these groups was to maybe fake UFO sightings. And then the eyewitnesses that would come forward from those sightings, they would gather those accounts and their public reactions to them.
So straight up like honeypots. Like
UFO honeypots.
They're going to fake UFO sightings. So that
literally to test the waters with how people would react to such an event.
Which is straight up the thing that we always talk about with like, why are they seeding information? Like if you believe in the whole thing of them putting messaging into movies and like all over the place in the pop culture, they're just like, it all comes to this. It's testing the waters. It's
but to me, it's almost like, okay, I'm trying to think what the difference between this and UFO like disclosure for the purpose of prepping the public, like in the way that, like, for instance, like a Project Bluebeam conspiracy, which is just so grand and insane.
Yeah, I mean it's a matter of scale. Like this is just basically like a basic, like, very simple. The government is doing these things to figure out who is to set up a fucking like hit list effectively.
Like Project Bluebeam is this conspiracy that's all about the entire world being subject to like visions of God and aliens and stuff, which is insane. But then what they're talking about here is going to bumfuck Kentucky and making people think that they saw a little gray man.
Yeah.
Which is slightly less insane than Project Bluebeam. It is.
Like, this is the realistic version. Project Bluebeam is a comic book version. Like, I know I bring this up so much. It's become like I really should just eventually make just like a fucking t-shirt or something, or it's just conspiracy theory is comic book plots. Like it is trying to make the real world thing into something that would be a fun story for the Avengers to tackle.
Yeah. So a few days before the Robertson panel, our boy Ruppelt had gotten a note from a scientist working under something called Project Stork. This was Dr. Howard Cross. And this Project Stork had been, I guess, assigned to analyze UFO data. And so Cross comes up with this quote unquote controlled experiment in which, quote, different types of aerial activity should be secretly and purposely scheduled in order to monitor the steady flow of reports from ordinary civilian observers, in addition to those by military and their official observers, end quote. And they, the civilians and these military people that they reference, would be kept in the dark about the entire operation.
Okay. That's fun.
And again, this is exactly what Davidson, the guy who put out the ECM idea, would be kind of suggesting the CIA is doing.
Gotcha.
And this is also like the early days of like the idea of the PSYOP.
Right.
Which PSYOPs include, of course, American civilians. And so now we have the question of at this point, the story sort of suggests like, okay, well, that's all well and good, but would the CIA actually try to perform psychological experiments on its civilians? Would they do that? Do we have any precedent? Is there anything?
Yeah.
Is there any historical precedent for that?
I should next time one of the like conspiracy bot accounts I follow on Twitter posts just like the list of the stuff the CIA has done on the American public. I should just save it for reference, you know?
Like for people who maybe aren't as like deep, like I have been really deep on the kook and spook and CIA shit like recently, which I often like make to the point where I make myself a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because it gets a little alarming the more you read into it.
'Cause there's some fucked up stuff in it.
And there's like recent stuff that like I don't even know if I want to like say aloud. Like I'm scared I'll get put on a list for real though, like for real.
Yeah.
And just there is an extensive history for those who maybe don't know, but you probably do if you're listening to this. There is an extensive history of the CIA doing psychological operations on the American populace, not just psychological, by the way, like all kinds of fucking shit. So, the same day that President Truman had basically made the Air Force a completely separate like division.
Mm-hmm.
That's the day that Kenneth Arnold's Army Air Force Intelligence, the agents Brown and Davidson died in a plane crash while carrying the material from the UFO. He also, of course, united the OSS and the wartime intelligence into the CIA. All this stuff happens on the same day. All this power is like put into one basket with very little oversight, which I kind of mentioned in our first episode as well.
Yeah.
So
that's a fucked up day in American history.
Yeah. So like the CIA can just do whatever the fuck they want.
Yeah.
They have very little oversight and a shitload of power. And another thing that I kind of always think about the CIA, at least when I keep reading this stuff, is like there's also a lot of like really stupid shit going on. Like some level of like incompetence as well.
They have a bit of a throw all the spaghetti at the wall kind of type of like methodology early on, especially that maybe persists to this day. It's just not all declassified yet.
Yeah. Well, in the 1970s, there was an investigation into some of the CIA's practices. This is when Congress basically said, "Hey, hey, real quick, can you tell us what's going on with this MKUltra shit?"
Yeah, Jesus.
Which we've talked about MKUltra. It's real. It's a real thing that happened, and it has to do a lot with doing shit to civilians that you shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, basically torturing civilians.
And so I guess the CIA also even like attempted to destroy documents relating to MK Ultra, but Congress was able to find out that the CIA through Project MK Ultra were trying to do these like mind control experiments on civilians with hypnosis and psychoactive like drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And given this, the idea of the CIA willing to like fake UFO sightings and events and then in trying to get ufologists to buy into it doesn't sound so crazy.
That's just like lunchroom hijinks at that point. Like
For real.
It's not even like, it doesn't even make the list of like wild things that the CIA would do if that's the case.
Yeah.
You know?
So like we're moving on from like these like radar spoofing ECM stuff to do more, it seems, to try and branch out, as it were, really flex the creative muscles. One person that they bring up, and like, again, I have to point out that this is all still kind of conspiracy. Like, you can't confirm basically most of this.
Yeah.
It's hard to say for sure. But one person that they cite as being a possible subject of an MK Ultra CIA operation is George Adamski.
Yep.
Who, very infamous UFO guy, well known for the photo of what I think turns out to be a dentist's lamp or something
like that. Yeah.
But this is like one of the guys who's like in the 50s. He's kind of becoming this like, you see this fusion of like mysticism and ufology coming together as well, but especially in the 60s. And he's also our OG abductee. Which is a person who claims to have been taken aboard a UFO craft and have whatever done to them. And this is where we get the story of the UFOs abducting him and telling him that they are a peacemaking race from Venus.
Yeah. Oh, Adamski.
Now,
we did an episode on him a long time ago.
We did.
And there's also the documentary that we watched, right?
I don't know if Adamski
no, we didn't do a documentary on him. Never mind.
Well, there's a lot of things to suggest that Adamski was a hoaxer. It's a little hard to say whether he was a full-on hoaxer or how much he believed. I think he was a bit of a hoaxer. But they point out in this story that like he also kind of included his politics in his UFO stuff.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
And apparently he was involved with a Nazi sympathizer named William Pelly. And apparently, I don't remember if I brought this up when if either of us brought this up when we were talking about Adamski. I don't know who did that episode, but apparently Adamski's Venusians get described as blonde Nordic looking people, and their shoes supposedly would leave swastikas in their footprints.
Oh, I don't remember.
Which I don't think I don't remember that at all. I don't know if for some reason, that seems to be one of the little details left out on the websites that really want to believe George Adamski's story.
Yeah, they kind of skip over that one.
Kind of weird. But the Mirage Men story points out that Adamski's contact with the Venusians was widely circulated.
I guess we haven't done an actual episode on Adamski.
He's just come up.
He's come up a lot.
Okay, maybe I'll have to do an Adamski episode sometime.
Yeah, make sure to cover the swastika shoes.
Definitely, definitely. And Adamski's stories about the Venusians and his abduction and stuff began to circulate in media very heavily just a few months after the Washington flyovers, which if you cross-reference the records that we do know about from the CIA, this is when they're like trying to figure out how to diffuse the UFO panic.
Okay.
So the idea here is Adamski is this guy who has met the aliens that are piloting these craft, and like just everybody chill out.
They're super nice.
They love peace. Yes, they might have some Nazi symbolism that's coincidental.
No, it comes from the ancient. It's an African symbol or whatever the fuck the people say.
Yes, I believe it's technically. I'm not going to actually say because I don't know for sure.
Yeah,
but
I forget exactly where
it does have its origins. But like, guys, like we're not using the swastika. It's just not. It's not happening.
That ship has sailed.
That ship has sailed. Get over it.
That one would be incredibly hard to reclaim.
Davidson,
Yes,
the guy who wrote the essay about the ECMs,
mm-hmm.
goes out of his way to say Adamski is, I believe, a CIA tool. And the later stories that come from Adamski may be a bit more revealing, because Adamski talks about encounters that would happen to him later, and the later accounts get more embellished, and like he talks about the Venusians picking him up from the desert, and like driving him out in black Pontiacs,
mm-hmm.
and giving him weird drinks and showing him images on a screen.
Like, are we talking about New Bomb Blast here? Like, what weird drinks are they giving him?
I don't know. Mysterious drinks.
He's getting fucking like Warhead soda or whatever the fuck.
The suggestion here, Niall, I think you probably already know where this is going, is maybe Adamski was an MKUltra subject.
Yeah.
And that he had been drugged and brainwashed, to whatever that exactly means, under the guidance of MKUltra, to kind of turn him into the weird guy that he was.
Yeah, to push UFO shit.
Yeah. Now there's another story about the CIA that can kind of like make you do a bit of a double take and consider the feasibility of them doing this kind of crazy shit. In 1958, before the story of Betty and Barney Hill comes out, which is like one of the most widely publicized stories of UFO abduction ever, there's the story of the Brazilian farmer Vias Boas.
Via Boas, yeah. I did an episode on him. Who fucked, I believe, some aliens.
Yeah, he is presented with a beautiful nude woman, and there's a whole exhibitionist deep throat situation.
Yeah, that we did a whole episode on that one. If you want the full story, just look that up in our back catalog.
Is it Vias?
I don't remember. I think it's Via Boas or something.
Via
but
Boas?
I'm not sure.
The year before the Betty and Barney stuff, he was supposedly abducted by a UFO. When he was, tilling the farm late at night, just taking care of the fields, trying to avoid the heat, and they see this like red flying light over the fields,
mm-hmm.
and it comes later again, and it's shaped like an egg. There's something at the top of it that's spinning at a great speed, and there's this red light that's coming from like all over the craft, and he tries to run away. But men in unusual clothing that's described in a way that is almost like protective suits.
Yep.
With these like fabric head coverings and these gloves, they come out of the craft and they grab him, carry him inside, strip him, wipe some kind of fluid over him, and then gas him with a fog, and then forced him to have sex with a beautiful woman. Which is, in the context of everything I've said leading up to this,
mm-hmm.
is weird.
Yes.
So he gets placed back on the field that he was working on. Boas goes home, and his sister is inspecting him, and he's got bruises. He vomits, and this yellow fluid comes out, and he just suffers for days with this illness. And he has these lesions, body aches, his eyes are irritated. Now, this all sounds really crazy if you come at it from the angle of, I was abducted by aliens.
Yep.
But 20 years after the fact, in 1978, a former CIA operative named Bosko Nedeljkovic, who had worked with the agency in Latin America from the mid 50s to the early 60s, he was a part of Project Mirage, which I guess helped fake UFO encounters around the world. And he claims that the Via Boas abduction from the point of view of the abductors, they had made Boaz the subject of a hallucinogenic drug experiment that was a part of this psychological warfare with UFOs.
Yeah. Jesus. You can't even keep it in the U.S., boys. Like, come on.
Nope.
The CIA.
So, based on his version of the story, that he claims, basically the craft that he described that was so strange was it was a helicopter, and it had specifically weird lights put on it and other like extra equipment to kind of make it seem strange. And I guess that would fit Boaz's description as like the egg-like object that's like got a rotating.
Yeah.
And I guess they could like detect him while he was in the field with using these heat sensors. And as they flew over, they spray him with an aerosol drug and then land. And I guess they like accidentally drop him on the deck of the helicopter as they're like pulling him aboard. And that's where the bruising on his chin comes from. And they just have done, and then like other experiments that were done on him while they brought him on are like just undisclosed.
Jesus.
Now again, cannot confirm this story at all, but it is kind of like, was MKUltra's like experimental drug on just like random people, was that like roped into their weird UFO psyop that they seem to be working on?
It very well could be. Like okay, so you know how we talk about like a lot of times conspiracies come from a little kernel of something that then they just take the entirely wrong conclusions from or blow entirely in the wrong direction.
Mm-hmm.
MKUltra is one of those things that all the conspiracy theories are surrounding it that are not confirmed at all, that are like out in the wildness of it, are all of these splinter groups. They're all of these like splinter things coming off of the MKUltra program that either continued the research in different directions or kind of superseded it and took it over and everything after it was supposedly shut down. So the fact that it was some of these techniques were then being used in other areas of faking UFO encounters around the world and like keeping this kind of paranoia alive makes a lot of sense in a certain direction.
Yeah.
I gotta say,
it's pretty weird. I don't think I'm like 100% convinced on all of it, but no. I'm ready to believe that the CIA has faked a bunch of UFO cases. And when we get into part 3, we're going to talk about confirmation of actual UFO psyop shit.
Fantastic. That'll be fun.
So this is all
probably
been
like incredibly frustrating.
It's a little distressing.
Yeah.
It's a little, it's a lot distressing. But it's very interesting. And I'm excited to talk about it, but we're going to get into that into part 3.
Yeah.
So
cool. So yeah. Do you have a big question?
Yes, Niall, I have a big question for you. And it's a theoretically yes or no question, but I think that we can kind of elaborate on it.
So it's on us to play in the space.
We have to play in the space a little bit. We have to splash around and get dirty, which we've already done on this episode.
We've gotten dirty enough in this episode. We've got to keep this big question good and Christian.
Yeah, definitely. Niall, if you could take an illicit drug that would its intended effect, the effect that you get from this drug is that you hallucinate an entire UFO abduction experience, would you be willing to take that drug? And if so, what kinds of aliens would you want to be abducted by?
That's interesting because like something that is so tailor-made to that of like you're going to take this thing and hallucinate a specific thing, but there's like, you know, differences inside of that are like based on whatever, like if it's some reflection of your psyche or however the hell it works. It's interesting to think of like would I take a very narrow specific hallucinogen?
Yeah. It's a tough question. Because like I think however many years ago before I started the podcast, my answer would have been no, because I still had a great fear of aliens and UFOs.
Yeah.
And 6 years later, in doing a podcast, just completely desensitized to the concept. I I I I proclaim yes. I excitedly say yes. I want to know. I gotta get the experience. And it sounds like in some cases, I'm gonna need all our Christian viewers to pause the episode here and skip ahead 15 seconds.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get to have sex with a beautiful woman.
Yeah, I mean, alien like relations is definitely a thing that'd be interesting to like. Okay, so I guess what it comes down to here for me is the whole thing of like, would it be just the very specific kind of boilerplate UFO experience of today, or would it be more of the free ranging?
I think it's kind of up to you. Like,
Okay.
what's the most predominant? Because like, I say, oh, maybe you have sex with a beautiful woman, like via boas, but like in some cases, you're the love and sausage guy, and you're having sex with like grays, like which is kind of
fine.
weird.
I mean,
but
look,
hey, you do you.
do you really? If you're gonna have sex with an alien, would you really want it to be so humanoid that it just could?
Yeah,
is
I guess-
basically the same thing.
I guess like if you can have the experience of having sex with a humanoid that is like very weird, I guess that's probably pretty fun for people.
I mean, even outside of like, to take this even out of like the sexual realm, I think that like the idea of doing this, you would want the most interesting experience you can have, because if you're just going to be having a very kind of stereotypical grays, maybe a couple reptilians behind them, commanding things experience where you're like laying on a table and there's like things checking stuff out in you and everything, that is so rote that it may not be worth it. It may not be worth
Yeah,
like an
that's fair.
experimental drug.
Now, I want to take it back to the sexual realm for a second. And
Okay, go
say,
ahead.
Maybe you want to inspect what the aliens have got going on down there. Like maybe it's all for the purpose of just like being, oh, I'm a researcher, and yes, I will bow down with the alien. But if you don't mind, could I make like a medical diagram real quick?
Can I do an etching?
Yeah. Can I be like that one lady who took casts of all the rock stars' penises?
Oh yeah, that's man.
But with alien vagina.
Yeah,
Or dick,
look,
whatever you want.
I've got a first
Or
look
what do they
deal
got?
with
Cloaca.
like Bad Dragon or whatever the fuck, and they're really looking for some exciting new things.
Where do you think we get the Bad Dragon designs from? It's
people
the
taking
alien,
MKUltra
yeah,
drugs?
MKUltra alien drugs. That's where that's how they get all their inspiration.
Oh man,
How else are you gonna come up with a dildo that has an ovipositor egg, which that's a real thing that I've seen. And I can't even fathom, but that people want that, I guess. People really want that.
Yeah, I mean, here's the
That's
thing.
fine.
Kyle. There's people want all sorts of things.
Sure.
It's not like I remember the.
Don't you feel full though? Like if you put an egg up your ass, like
Yeah, I think that's
like
part
there's
of the point.
Okay. Oh. Okay. Got it.
This I didn't realize that this was going to be me explaining fetishes to you for an hour.
That's the bonus episode.
Yeah. But no, it's like, because I think that out of all this stuff, I would want the most original experience I could have.
Yeah, definitely.
So if that includes some sort of ovipositor, I guess then that's I'd have ancient aliens would be able to keep me on longer for weird storytelling.
Can you imagine taking this drug and like cutting it with sativa and meeting the xenomorph? Like how horrible it would be.
If this that's actually a good scenario, because what if in looking for a unique alien experience,
you have to mix other drugs in.
Well, there's that aspect, but what if you accidentally stumble into the horror realm, where instead of like you're meeting some kind of cool looking weird aliens, you're being stalked on a desolate ship
that would
by
be
something that's going
horrifying.
The ultimate predator.
So you take did I say sativa?
You did.
I meant salvia.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
I was gonna say
I
that's
said sativa. I meant salvia.
Sativa would be a bit more of a mellow thing.
No, yeah, I was
think.
gonna say, because if you take the good bud, that's how you meet the Space Brothers.
Yeah.
But I meant to say salvia.
So that would just take you.
That would just take you straight to alien
I think
hell.
if you cut the MKUltra, like the MKUltra hallucinogen drugs with salvia, you end up in Doom. You just end up straight up in like hell on Mars.
Sure.
Doom.
And if you end up kind of cutting it with some DMT, you get to actually have sex with the machine elves.
Yeah.
Or I guess that would be kind of like an ascended consciousness thing.
Yeah.
Like you probably go to another plane of like consciousness who or whatever. You activate your starseed forcibly. Like.
Do you think a starseed is like a thing inside of you? Is that you're thinking
kind of
it's
like the pineal gland?
Okay. All right.
It's like a funny little nut shaped.
How many Starseed episodes do I have to do before you understand the concept?
I know.
I guess we got to do another month of them. Let's go.
Yeah. There's the little nut in your chest that gives off vibrational energies that you have to make vibrate at 432 hertz. And the only way to do that is to take the alien drugs with DMT.
And what if you took the MKUltra hallucinogen while listening to iDozer tracks?
What if? I'm there.
Yeah.
The moment I can do it, I'm there.
Oh man.
I'm turning on the iDozer experience hell.
Yeah.
Binaural beat.
Well, the fucked up thing, this is I should have talked about this on the actual episode where we talked about iDozers, but like I was the lamest person when it came to, because like they had all of these things. There was like the cocaine track and all these stuff. I downloaded the weed one. Like that's like the most basic thing you could do. That's like the least interesting experience. But it was like,
I genuinely don't remember what I downloaded to like see.
I think I downloaded the hell one too, but
I think I downloaded the like horror ones that I was like, oh, what is this? Is this gonna freak me out? Because I was thirsty for that shit on the internet. And it didn't do anything at all. So
yeah.
I mean, I could have told myself that, but back then I was just stupid enough to see what was going on. So.
Yeah, look, it happens. Everyone falls for some weird shit on the internet at some point.
Strap on some headphones, listen to some binaural beats, and smoke up the good alien drugs. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, have yourself a fun alien experience. What would you cut your MKUltra hallucinogens with to have your preferred alien experience?
Yeah.
Answer it in either the Discord or on our Twitter DMs.
Or on their email.
Yeah, that too. Email, yes.
If you're not in Twitter or Discord, like that's also perfectly viable.
Yeah, if you're not on Twitter, I understand because shit's happened there.
It's pretty lame.
So I guess, do you want to take care of some business?
Yes, sir.
All right. If you want to follow us on all these, find places to talk about your preferred alienscape, you can find us on Twitter at IGW Podcast.
You can follow us on Facebook.com/itgetsweirdpodcast.
And we're on all your favorite podcatchers, from Stitcher to Google Play to Apple Podcasts to Spotify. If you listen to podcasts somewhere, look up It Gets Weird. We're probably there.
We're streaming usually at least once a week on twitch.tv/itgetsweird. And of course, itgetsweirdpodcast@gmail.com. Come and tell us about what alien experience you want from your MKUltra drugs. And then we will eat those emails like so many popcorns. Patreon.com/itgetsweird. We have a $2 tier and a $5 tier. At the $2 tier, you get access to It Gets Weird TV, where we're currently watching The X-Files and pornography.
That really got me.
And
I don't
then
know why.
at the $5 tier, you get access to It Gets Weird TV Plus on the off weeks of It Gets Weird TV. Bonus episodes that I'm doing, Niall's doing. I talk about the internet. Niall talks about comics and books and stuff. And sometimes we watch a movie. So at the $5 tier, you're getting bonus content every single week. Whether you donate to the $2 tier or the $5 tier, you get access to our Discord, where we're hanging out, talking with listeners of the show, talking about all kinds of stuff. You also get the mainline episodes 2 days early on Friday instead of Sunday on your own little private Patreon feed. And you get the satisfaction of supporting your favorite weird podcast. There's also a $1 tier that's just a tip. You don't get anything out of it. You're just saying, hey, I like your show. I like what you do. Here's $1 a month. And we say, nice. If you can't donate, tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell your congressman all about It Gets Weird Podcast.
Thank you all for listening. This has been It Gets Weird, and I've been Niall.
And I'm Kyle, signing out.
Peace.